I'm always anxious about these, but like in an excited, anxious way. I want to make sure my slides line up with my main points are. When you're dealing with complex ideas that you have to talk on, and there's a lot of research on it, you're either going to say too much and people aren't going to follow it, or you're going to say it in too complicated of a way and people aren't going to follow it. So you got to find a middle ground. I want people to leave here with an idea of how to address difficult conversations, and we're focusing on this piece of getting your kid mental health help. So I want them to leave here with an idea about what to look for in their own kids and how to bring it up to their co-parent or their spouse or whoever. That's what I'm hoping for. So yeah, should be good though.
Well, thanks for coming, everybody. Appreciate it. I'm the principal of the school here, so I'm glad you guys are here. If I don't know you, haven't had a chance to meet. So Yorkville Christian School, we serve students in the 6th through 12th grade, and we have about 300 students here this year, and blessed to have Nick here as one of our school dads, and we met last year actually and started talking about this, and great guy, excited about it. For those of you that don't know him, he's president and CEO of Unbroken Family Counseling. It's a practice that offers telehealth along with personal therapy at 5 locations throughout the Chicagoland area. He began his career in youth ministry, actually, and brings personal experiences with loss and family change to his work as a therapist. Losing his biological mom at the age of 3, he learned how to navigate life in a blended family, relied on church and his faith as a stabilizing force in his life, discovered a passion for helping others at a young age. In 2014, Nick realized that he could have a greater impact on people's lives as a therapist than from a pulpit. He stepped away from the ministry and in 2015 launched Unbroken Family Counseling, and his daughter, who's also here, she's a blessing at our school, Olivia. So it's great to have you here, Nick. Let me go ahead and pray, and then I'll turn it over to him. Heavenly Father, thank you for this evening, and thank you for a chance to come together, Lord. And thank you for Nick and his family. Thank you for those that are here tonight, Lord, and those that I know would love to have come but are unable to, and excited they'll have a chance to see it via video as well in the days ahead. And just pray as we think about our families and our kids, and Lord, ultimately we want each one of them to know and love you. But thank you, Lord, for how you use Nick in the lives of families and kids every single day, Lord. So be with our time tonight in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Nick, thank you very much.
Thanks for being here, guys. So I met with Fred and Aaron last year because one of the things that is out there that we all kind of know about or has been researched is how the mental health needs of especially high school age students and the ability for the schools, even especially public schools, to meet that need is just not really there. They don't have enough resources. And that's especially true for a private school. Because private schools, they have to rely, obviously, on the volunteers and the staff that they have. They don't have an unlimited amount of taxpayer money. So when I met with Fred, I wanted to know how I could contribute to the stuff that's going on in this school. What do they have that helps kids that are having mental health challenges? And what can they do? What can I do to help be a part of that solution? And in it, one of the things that we kind of discussed was a need for a better understanding about how it works, how the medical or mental health care system works. Hint, it's not a system. It's more of a giant mess of tangled stuff that kind of works together sometimes. Mental health is a really tricky process. And so in putting together this presentation, one of the things I originally was thinking was just kind of, let's put together an idea, give parents an idea of what to look for when their kid is going through a crisis, and then what to do about it. But as I was putting together, one of the things that started to come to light is it's not that easy of a decision. And one of the areas that I'm big on in psychology is decision-making psychology. So we're going to talk a lot about that kind of stuff today. And the more that we talked about this, and the more I worked on this presentation, what I kind of started to realize was that the amount of fear and uncertainty and worry that went into making this decision would always lead to conflict. And so we titled this The Joy of Conflict because, as you'll see today, conflict is a big part of how we make good decisions, especially difficult decisions like when our kids are struggling and need that extra help. And I believe that really any good decision that we make in our families happens in the context of conflict. And that without that, we really don't make those kinds of good decisions. So this presentation tonight is a mix of some things. It's a mix of some decision-making psychology, some family dynamics, and how to handle conflicts. It's a little bit of what to look for when your kid is struggling and how to identify a problem. And it's all going to be done through the lens of getting your kid mental health help. I'm doing this because in the 15 years of mental health experience that I have as a therapist, one of the things that's been consistently true is that, and I've personally seen it, is that when we understand some key rules that go into conflict, then we can make good decisions as a family. And we'll all do a little bit better because of that. We're going to talk about processing. How does the brain make decisions and figure out stuff and make things work? We're going to talk about the gears of war. What goes into a good, healthy conflict? I thought that was a cool name for it. And we're going to talk about making the right decision in the end. We're going to wrap it all together with that. All right? So what we're going to talk about first is how the process works. There is really two main theories that exist right now in decision-making psychology. The first one we're going to talk about is called naturalistic decision-making. Naturalistic decision-making is called that because decisions are made in real time. You don't always have all the information. How many of you wish you would have bought Amazon stock back in 2000? You didn't know it was going to be successful, so you didn't buy the stock. Naturalistic decision-making looks at stuff like that. It tries to help people figure out how to make right decisions in the best possible way with the information they have in that moment. This is where expertise is really important because a person with an expertise in an area is really good at naturalistic decision-making in that specific area. They've learned through experience and through trial and error and education what to do and what not to do. The next model is called the two-system model. We're going to talk a lot about that tonight because they kind of go hand in hand, really. The two-system model basically looks at people and says that we have two types, system 1 and system 2, of thinking that we use. System 1 is intuitive and emotional. System 2 is complex. So we're going to look at those two models and see how it affects what goes into our day-to-day lives, really. All right? So naturalistic decision-making looks at a few things. It wants you to trust your gut. Use your instincts and your intuition a little bit. It's important that people who practice this model are very well trained. That's a key thing. If you're practicing naturalistic decision-making, you really need to know what you're doing. And then the last thing is it has a lot more real-world application. One of the great examples of this is Sully, the pilot who in 2009 crash-landed his plane in the Hudson River, saving everybody on board and a bunch of people on the ground for that matter.
Too low, terrain.
50, 40, 30, 20.
Successful landing at Teterboro, runway 19.
Multiple airports, runways, 2 successful landings. We are simply mimicking what the computer already told us.
You know, a lot of toes were stepped on in order to set this up for today. And frankly, I really don't know what you gentlemen plan to gain by it.
Can we get serious now?
Captain?
We've all heard about the computer simulations, and now we are watching actual sims, but I can't quite believe you still have not taken into account the human factor.
Human piloted simulations showed that you could make it back to the airport.
No, they don't. These pilots were not behaving like human beings, like people who are experiencing this for the first time.
Well, they may not be reacting like you did.
Immediately after the bird strike, they are turning back for the airport, just as in the computer sims, correct?
That is correct.
They obviously knew the turn and exactly what heading to fly. They did not run a check. They did not switch on the APU.
They had all the same parameters that you faced.
No one warned us. No one said you were going to lose both engines at a lower altitude than any jet in history. But be cool. Just make a left turn for LaGuardia like you're going back to pick up the milk. This was dual engine loss at 2,800 feet, followed by an immediate water landing with 155 souls on board. No one has ever trained for an incident like that. No one. In the Teterboro landing, with its unrealistic bank angle, we were not the Thunderbirds up there. I'd like to know how many times the pilot practiced that maneuver before he actually pulled it off. I'm not questioning the pilots. They're good pilots. But they've clearly been instructed to head for the airport immediately after the bird strike. You've allowed no time for analysis or decision making. In these simulations, you take in all of the humanity out of the cockpit. How much time did the pilots spend planning for this event, for these simulations? You are looking for human error. Then make it human.
This wasn't a video game. It was life and death. Sully's right, that's worth a few seconds.
Please ask how many practice runs they had.
17. The pilot who landed at Teterboro had 17 practice attempts before the simulation we just witnessed.
The reaction decision time will be set at 35 seconds.
35 seconds, not enough time.
We only had 208 seconds total, so I'll take it.
Upload the link.
Outside of the epic mustaches those two guys have, the idea is that naturalistic decision-making happens in real time. You can take certain things that you've learned and apply it to future events that you haven't experienced yet. I looked into Sully in place of this clip when I was doing this. He had a lot of training in the Air Force. He had been in emergency situations, not like that, but he had been in emergency situations plenty of times where he could keep his cool, figure out what to do, and do so quickly, which allowed him to make that decision as fast as he did and save everybody on board. Naturalistic decision-making is something that we're going to learn a little bit more about today, especially as it applies to conflict. Because as we get to the spot where we talk about how men and women think differently, you're going to see how often women really, more than men, use that, and how that plays a big part in a mom's ability to detect really early on when something's wrong with her child. But her husband might be a little behind on that because he's going to analyze it a little bit more. And that creates a lot of conflict because one of you thinks there's a problem with your kid, and who do you blame? And the other one thinks there's not a problem with your kid. You're going to be the one who gets blamed. The next one, like I discussed, is the two-system model. System one is fast. It's based on biases and past experiences. This is where your echo chambers on social media come from. As a matter of fact, the two-system model of decision-making is a big part of what goes into the social media monetization programs. Social media uses this exact theory as a way to make sure that you're paying attention to something. The longer you spend watching a video, the more they'll give you that video. If you go through my Instagram Reels, you'll get a fishing video, a cooking video, an exercise video. You'll get the same stuff over and over again because my brain, has, like all of ours, has been automatically trained to kind of just look at those things, to stick to those things. And social media knows that, so that's what they give you. It's based off of that very thing, and naturalistic decision-making is related to that social media uses as a way to get your attention. Now, the system 2 stuff is a lot more complicated. This is when you sit down and create a budget or a retirement plan. You try to account for every possible variable and calculate exactly what you need to figure out so you get the best possible outcome. What the research shows is that System 1 makes up about 80% of the decision-making we have. Fun fact, we make about 37,000 decisions a day. That's actually a thing that they researched. I don't know how they did that, but they did. 37,000 decisions, about 80% of those decisions are done automatically. Things like, did you shower today? Did you brush your teeth? What'd you put in your coffee? You're not calculating those out, but on your way to work, there's a traffic accident and you got to reroute your route to work so you can get there on time. Well, you're going to slow down a little bit and think it through. And if you've noticed, if you try to do that while you're on the highway going 80 miles an hour, it's a little bit stressful. Anybody ever turn down the radio so they can see better? That's a thing. That's a thing. Our brain is capable of doing a lot of things, but it's not really capable of multitasking. So we're trying to focus on one thing, and the music is on. The distraction of the music makes us not see as well. That's an actual thing that happens because we're trying to use the System 2 type thinking in those processes, and having distractions takes away from our ability to do that. Okay? So let's test this out. We got a couple of problems here. Now, if you know the answers, don't blurt them out. Just raise your hand. Okay? All right, first problem. If a lily pad doubles every day and it covers a pond in 30 days, at what point will the pond be half covered? Go ahead and think about it. The answer is 29 days. On day 29, it will be half covered. Because if it doubles every day, it'll be 50% covered on the second to last day, and then fully covered the next day. All right? This is an example of how System 1 works. If you said 15 days, you're simplifying the problem and coming up with the fastest answer. This next one's a favorite of mine. I know some of you know this one. A bat and a ball together cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? All right, take a minute, think about it. How many of you said 10 cents in your head? That's the most common answer, is 10 cents. They actually gave this question to Harvard students, and they gave it to like regular state school students. 25% of the Harvard students got it wrong. 50% of the state school students got it wrong. It's not a measure of intelligence at all. It's a measure of what our brain does to make decisions when we recognize problems. It goes to the simplest and easiest solution. The real answer is 5 cents. If the bat is $1 more than the ball, okay, then you have to do this equation. X is the ball plus X plus 1, the bat, equals $1.10. 2X plus $1 equals $1.10. Then you solve it, and you get your answer. It requires some algebra. It requires some slowing down of your thoughts. But what we tend to do is we tend to just go to the easiest answer. We just say 10 cents, $1, we minus it out, we get 10. That's how we do it. Last question. If you are running in a race and you overtake the person in second place, what place are you in? How many of you say first place? How many of you, anybody think about it? First place? Okay. Second place. You're in second place. If you overtake the person in second place, you are also in second place. If you overtake the person in first place, you would be in first place. But again, our brains want to jump to the conclusion and the easiest part. These are all examples of how System 1 and System 2 sort of affect things. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because there's a lot of practical application when you understand what's going into your thinking and how you're making decisions. It'll help you make better decisions and have better conflict. So here's the practical application. Experts are allies. Experts are people that have practiced the naturalistic decision-making within their framework of work. We go to a mechanic to fix our car for a reason. We could probably fix it ourselves. It's going to take longer. It might even cost us more money because we're going to screw it up. We bring it to Doc Motor Works. They'll fix it up real quick. You have a great coffee there. The owner's a really nice guy. It'll be a great experience. But you want to have experts that are allies. If you are working with a mental health professional and they are not willing to work with you as a parent, hear what your concerns are, find a new mental health professional. Trust but verify. Your gut is not always right. So if you do have something in your gut that says there's a problem going on with my kid, that's important. That's a big signal. But verify it. Slow down. Track it. Figure out what to do with it. Take your time unless it's an emergency. So I gotta stop here a little bit on this because this is something that happens a lot. You'll have a kid who gets in trouble, and he'll say to his mom or dad, "I'll just kill myself," right? Throwing out the big dramatic suicide risk. If your son or daughter uses that as a threat, do not hesitate, treat it like an emergency, call an ambulance, and have them picked up and taken to the nearest mental health hospital. Here's why. One, if they mean it, you just save their life, because sometimes they mean it. Two, if they don't mean it, that's the last time they're ever going to use that freaking threat. Mental health hospitals are not fun. They're not intended to be fun unless you're really in desperate need. So if you're dealing with a problem and you're seeing behavioral issues, which we're going to get to in a little bit what those are, track it, but you don't have to react. But if there's a real emergency, if a suicide threat comes up or something like that, then you act. And the way you would act is you would literally call 911 and take your kid to an emergency room. It'll be the last time they do it, or it'll save their life. Write things down. This is a really important one because as you're tracking what's going on with your family, with your sons and daughters, you want to sort of keep notes of it because sometimes we'll overemphasize one problem, a bad grade in math, let's say, or a breakup with a friend or a boyfriend or girlfriend. In reality, there's a lot more going on, and we want to really make sure that we're tracking this stuff the right way. I really recommend that parents write things down when they see problems with their kids because you want to see a pattern forming. Doesn't take long. You don't need to do this for months and months. If you see 6 weeks of a pattern and it tells you something's a problem, then you definitely want to address it. But you can't see that unless you're writing it down. You got to chart it like you're charting a stock or something. All right? So monitoring your family, what to look for. There are clear things that are problems, and there are clear things that are normal, especially when you're dealing with adolescents. Weird question. I want to just see if anybody can answer this. Adolescence, let's assume, starts at the earliest at age 10. When does it end? Anybody throw out a number? Between 18 and 27. That's about right. Women, it ends a little earlier, around 25. Men, it ends a little later, 27, 28, sometimes 40, depending on the guy.
That was my reference. I have a boy and a girl.
There you go. yeah, you know exactly, yeah. And they're older too, right? Yeah. All right, normal changes. So normal changes are things like this, where you see your kid trying to change style, right? Let's say, they like to dress in Hawaiian shirts like me, and then suddenly they're changing it up a little bit and they're wearing baggy clothes. That's okay, that's normal. Shifting music tastes and interests. So shifting music tastes, they might like rock now because they were raised around it, but then they get introduced to rap and they like that. That's fine. Shifting interests, maybe they're into sports for a little while, but as you get older, you're not as competitive. Maybe you don't have the interest. You don't want to spend hours and hours at practice. That's okay. If your kid's pulling away from that, as long as he's still having other interests, that's fine. New friend groups and activities. Part of what happens, especially in adolescence, is searching for an identity. You're trying to figure out what makes you you, what's special about you. And as part of that, you're going to lose some friends, you're going to gain some other friends, and you're going to have these kind of interpersonal conflicts that have to happen. So that's normal. That part's okay. And experimenting with different personas. So you might have, because they're looking for their identity, they might 1 week, want to cut their hair in a mohawk, and then the next week they want to cut it like they're preppy, right? Like they're trying different styles, different personas, because they're looking for identity. Those kinds of things are not things to be overly concerned about that I would say require mental health help. But these are. If there's large changes in grades, I got the funny story just popped in my head about this. Large changes in grades. You would think that if a kid is a bad student and suddenly a good student, that's a good thing. It's not. It's definitely a red flag when a good student is a bad student. That's a clear one. But when a bad student is a good student, it could be a red flag. So I had a kid who was like a persistent D student, and he got like a 32 on his ACT. Everyone was shocked. You know what he told me? He cheated. He wasn't suddenly a good student. He was doing something behaviorally incorrect, right? That would be a red flag. So if you have a son or daughter that's suddenly getting good grades, it's not necessarily something like depression, but it could illustrate drug use. It could illustrate cheating or other types of bad behavior in school. Something you want to look at. If they suddenly go from being a bad student to a good student, don't just be like, oh, suddenly I have a genius. No, you don't. He's still just as dumb as he always was. You just have to go talk to him about it and figure out what's really going on. Sometimes it is that they just locked in and decided they're going to do well in school. That does happen. One of my favorite stories, I had a client who had a serious problem with drugs and alcohol for a long time, was in and out of rehab, dropped out of school. And then around 18, got clean from drugs, went back, got his GED, started going to college, started going to church. That was a big thing for him. And then 2 years after going to college, decided he wanted to play sports again. He's a very good athlete. Made a highlight reel of a bunch of stuff, sent it to all the Ivy League schools, got a full-ride scholarship to Columbia in New York. Total turnaround. So you can see good behavior. And he had been a historically bad student his entire academic career. That was an example of someone figuring it out. So good grades aren't always a bad thing, but you do want to keep an eye on it. Significant sudden behavior shifts. So a good example of this would be like if you have a kid that's very verbal and active and social, and they're suddenly locking themselves in their room every night, that would be a big red flag, obviously, right? Seemingly trying to be someone completely different. So if we're talking about persona changes, that's one thing. But if you're a country boy wearing cowboy boots, and then the next thing you know, you're trying to dress like Eminem, that would be an indication something's wrong. So you want to watch out for stuff like that. And then abandoning all previous interests overnight. That's a common sign of depression. When someone starts giving things away and doesn't have any interest in anything anymore, or their friends or anything, that's a big sign that something is severely going on, and you really want to address that as soon as you can. Attitude is a big one too. A lot of parents, feel like, oh yeah, I got a 15-year-old daughter, she has attitude. Yeah, that's true. She's a 15-year-old daughter, but there's a difference between normal attitude and bad attitude that needs addressing. So normal attitude is if they're being respectful but having emotional swings, if they're rational in their shifts, things like that, that's normal. Age-appropriate, independent seeking, that kind of a thing, that's normal. Like wanting to stay up late. A really common one that they found was adolescents in junior high like to swear, but they're really bad at it. They don't know how to take the two words and put them together in a sentence that actually makes sense, So they'll just be like, you're a poopy butt. It's like 5-year-old bad language kind of stuff. But it's their way of experimenting because it's bad words, right? I can say bad words when I'm not around my mom, dad, grandma, or teachers and kind of get away with it. That's normal independence seeking. If they're saying that to your face, that's a problem. There's a bit of that where you want your kids to have some form of rebellion, but it can't cross the line into disrespectful attitudes. All right? Concerning attitudes, like I said, are disrespectful attitudes, complete lack of interest, self-imposed isolation is always a big one. When you see that, be concerned, or hostile or aggressive actions. When I have kids that come to our practice that are, we'll say, emotionally dysregulated, they're not good at handling their emotions well, one of the first things I try to address with the parents is respect. If your kid's having a bad day, that's fine. He can't treat you disrespectfully. And there's a really good reason why. They might think something's unfair. They might not like what you've done as a parent. They might think that maybe the teachers are out to get them. But the way you handle it's important, because when you're 25 and your boss does something you don't like and you don't handle it right, he's no longer your boss. You're now unemployed. In the adult world, you have to handle things in an appropriate and assertive way, not in an aggressive and disrespectful way. So when kids are doing that sort of stuff and it's consistent and it's persistent and it's having a lot of consequences, or getting kicked out of schools or getting detentions, that's a big sign that there's a problem in the attitude that needs to be addressed. Substance use, now, this is a tricky one. So I put this little disclaimer at the bottom. If a kid is doing something around substances that might be deemed normal, like normal experimentation, we'll get to that in a second, it doesn't mean you shouldn't discipline it. You discipline it. You absolutely if you catch your kid vaping, you ground them, right? But catching a kid vaping doesn't mean they have a drug addiction. Substance use is somewhat common, especially in adolescence. Zens and vapes, they're, like it or not, they're marketed towards kids. That's why they have flavors, right? They're marketed towards kids. There's an idea that kids will do some experimentation to rebel with substances and things that we wouldn't approve of as parents. When you catch them doing that, you need to discipline them on that. But it is also normal for them to experiment with some stuff. Having natural curiosity about drugs, talking about it, asking about it, hey, what does this do? That's normal. Hey, some kids brought up cocaine today at school and I don't know what it is. Can you tell me what it is? Sure. That's normal. That's nothing to be afraid about. Especially if they're learning it through a school program. Those are really structured that way. What's a red flag when it comes to substance abuse would be like if they're into a drug culture. So it's not uncommon for kids who really like smoking marijuana, for instance, to be able to tell you all the different kinds of marijuana, what all the research is, all this sort of stuff that's going on in the world that they're getting off the internet and trying to really justify it. And they'll even say things. You'll have drug users will say things like, I've done my research. I've had clients say that to me and they've died of overdoses. So doing your research, especially as a 16-year-old, doesn't mean you're going to do something safe. But if your kid is telling you, I've done my research, that's a big red flag that they're dealing with a substance abuse problem. Nobody cares about doing research unless you're planning on using it that much. So kids who are doing that are really expressing an addiction, and they're trying to express it or trying to be careful with their addiction. Quick driveway meetings, this is a big one. That's how you know you got a drug dealer in your house. So-and-so stops by for 5 minutes, they go out and talk and he leaves. That happens like 3 or 4 times in a night. Yeah, your kid's probably dealing pot, that kind of a thing. That's what that would look like. Possessions of paraphernalia or other unexplained substances. That's an obvious one. If you find, hash pipes and stuff in their car, they're using it in an inappropriate way. That's not experimentation. Experimentation is like having a beer at a party, asking about it, can I see what your whiskey tastes like? That's experimentation. Doing things like on the other side, those are red flags. And finally, I like to give this to the parents in general. This is what I want parents to do in order to be attentive to what's going on in their kids' lives. Be annoying. We annoy the absolute crap out of our kids, like almost on purpose. My daughter has a screenshot of my wife laying in my daughter's bed upside down doing a yoga pose. And I asked her, I go, where did that picture come from? Mom just came in one day and started doing yoga in my room for no reason. She was stretching her back out or something like that. It's a really funny picture. But we are intentionally, lovingly annoying with our kids, especially our older one, but also our younger one. If they're telling you you're annoying, that's a good thing. You're doing something right. Be interested. Ask a lot of questions. Get to know their friends. Get to know their friends' parents. Have an idea about who they hang out with. I was talking to a mom the other day who was really on it with her son. I was really impressed. She had said, yeah, he's hanging out with this new group. I've gotten to know the kid. I've gotten to know the mom. And I think they're a little bit of I think they're kind of troublemakers. And I'm trying to get my son to kind of be away from him a little bit. And she managed to have him have boundaries with that because she was able to talk to him and talk through it with him. And he would always talk about how annoying his mom was. Oh, you're so annoying. Just leave me alone. But because she was doing these things and showed an interest, she was able to help him avoid some pitfalls. Be validating. It's perfectly fine for a kid to feel things, even though those feelings are wrong or misplaced or not rational. The way you would do that is you might say something like, okay, I understand you're mad. That's not saying I would be mad too. That's not saying you're right and I'm wrong. That's saying I understand that you're mad that we grounded you. I'm not, and leave it at that. No buts. I understand you're mad. That's all. You don't have to have a but to that. But you did something wrong. That invalidates it. Validation is an extremely important skill. Empathy is not the same thing as validation. That's also important to understand. Empathy is I feel your feelings. That's great to do, but it's not going to always help when you're trying to figure out if your kid is okay or not. But validation does. Because what validation does is it tells someone that they have a right to their feelings and that they're safe with continuing to share those with you. So validate their feelings, even if you don't agree or understand, validate your kids' feelings. That's extremely important. A lot of parents want to try to argue with their son or daughter about, well, you shouldn't feel that way. You should feel like more motivated to do better in school because you got a bad grade. No, the kid doesn't feel that way right now. Yeah, I know you're mad you got a bad grade. That's all. That's really important. And finally, be attentive. About 80% of body language, of communication is body language. Pick up on those little cues. Look for things like slouching and shoulders and how they're carrying themselves. Did your son or daughter shower that day? Did they not? Are they somebody who normally does and they're just having a bad day, or what's going on? Because of course you're not going to be able to pick up on all the signs we just went through if you're not paying attention. And be very intentional about being attentive. What I mean by that is when you get home after a long day and all you want to do is sit back and scroll through your Facebook or hang out on your phone, put your phone down and spend time with your son or daughter, because being intentional about that tells them you're interested. They know you're watching. And when they know a parent is watching, they're less likely to get themselves in trouble or do attention-seeking behavior that will get your attention. So be attentive and let them know you're being attentive. All right, gears of war. This is the fun part. We're going to talk about how to fight. You guys ready for this one? This will be good.
It's just, there's all this pressure, And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head. And it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
No, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Come on. If you would just...
Don't.
Anybody ever see that one? No? Yeah. Yeah, that's a, it's not about the nail, is a common video resource that we've been using in mental health, especially with marriage therapy, as a way to illustrate the differences between men and women and how they think. So our brains are made up of two types of matter, gray matter and white matter, and they work together to do different things. And there's some, the research on this is kind of difficult because obviously you can't cut open a live human brain and see how it's working. The best we have is some sort of like EEGs and things that show the electrical activity in brains as it compares to brain regions and how it all functions. And anecdotally, at least, what we see is that women are really experiential. They're experiential in the way that they process information. And men are more analytical. The gray matter and white matter stuff kind of works like this. On average, women tend to use more gray matter when they're processing information. They rely on areas of the brain that are, what it's really saying here is that they're better with language and feeling and expressing feelings verbally, right? If you're a man and you've ever been in a fight with your wife, you've lost. And you will always lose. You will never win that fight. The simple reason is they're just better at it than you. There's one piece of research that said that women on average use 10,000 words a day. On average, men use 1,000 words a day. Now, that doesn't mean that men don't communicate. They just don't communicate verbally. Men communicate a lot more through behavioral stuff because that deals with analytics a little bit better. It's one of the reasons why sex is so important to men, is because it's, how do I know you like me? Well, you were willing to have sex with me. That sort of stuff, because it isn't even that. It's not sex. It's, do you want me? How do I know you want me? Do you desire me? How do I know you desire me? Well, if you initiated it, if you seemed to want to hold my hand, if you wanted to hug me, if you kissed me, if you were happy to see me when you came home, if your behaviors showed me you were interested, then I know you're interested. And women want the words. Interesting stuff on sex real quick, just a side note on this. There's pornography, as we all know, and overwhelmingly men watch that stuff. Women read books with that same stuff. The smutty novels you get at the grocery store. That sort of stuff is how women process information and play out their sexual fantasies, where men will do it through a video and a visual of some kind. Women use intuition a lot more to figure out what's going on because it's a survival instinct. If you're talking to a guy and he's into you and you're a woman, you're trying to figure out, is he a nice guy? Is he a wife beater? Is he a serial killer? Does he work hard? Is he smart? You have a whole book you are writing on the guy. When I do couples counseling, I tell men all the time, your wife is making a portfolio of you. In the last 5 years, or however long you guys have been having your problems, it hasn't gone very well. And now you have to get a new portfolio, and you got to get her to start over and rewrite the entire book she's written on you. It's a very challenging thing. About 80% of divorces are initiated by women. And the reason is that women have a lot more expectations that they place on men. That's actually a really good thing too, because if it wasn't for women placing expectations on men, you know what most men would be doing right now? They'd be living in a one-bedroom apartment with a box as a table, a lazy boy, a big screen TV, leftover Chinese food in their refrigerator. They wouldn't be doing anything like they're doing now. But they work hard and they do things because women put expectations on them. And those expectations change. But that creates a lot of conflict. Some of the differences in men and women just in how the brain structure works. Men often perform better in certain spatial tasks. So things like, I heard a story once of a wife wanted her husband to move a 6-foot couch into a 5.5-foot space. She asked the husband to come over there. The husband looked at the couch and said, it's not going to fit. She goes, can you try? He's like, fine, even though he knew it wasn't going to fit. So 2 hours later, the walls are all dinged up, the couch is all sideways, he's all sweaty, and she goes, you know, I didn't think it was going to fit anyway. They do better on spatial tasks. Women do better on verbal fluency and social cognition and multitasking. That's well researched, actually. As a matter of fact, there was one study that said that women need on average 45 minutes more sleep than men. Part of the reason is because they're multitasking. Now, fun fact, we don't multitask. Brains don't do that. They switch rapidly between tasks. Women do that a lot faster than men. So when it says that women multitask, women are balancing, juggling all day, what time do the kids need to be picked up? What's for dinner? What's their homework like? All that stuff. What's our budget? Do we have the money for this? It's all happening all at once for them. Men, their brain activation tends to be more lateralized, meaning one hemisphere dominates. That's a real fancy way of saying they're analytical. That's what that means. Men shut off their emotions to solve a problem. They don't care how it feels. They just want the lawn to be cut. Women, they use both. That's a real fancy way of saying they're experiential. Their feelings matter for what the problem is. That's what was going on in the video. It's not about the nail. Obviously, there's a nail in the woman's head, and that's causing all of her problems. That's not what she's interested in a response from her husband. Her husband is shutting off that side of the brain, the part of the brain that says, hey, this must feel like crap. And he's just telling her, take the nail out of your head. And what happens? She gets frustrated because he doesn't understand, according to her, what she's going through. That's a really big part of fighting with couples, is a woman will have an experience and go to her husband. Her husband will get the answer right away and say, well, this is all you have to do. But his wife won't like that, and she'll keep bringing it up because she wants to know, do you understand the problem? You can't answer a question if you don't know what the question is. So when a woman is experiencing something, a problem with her kid, let's say, and she goes to her husband and says, hey, I think Johnny is struggling. And her husband says, he's fine, because that's what men will do. What ends up happening? There's a fight. Well, I don't think you hear me. I'm really worried about him. And there's this back and forth. That's what creates a lot of those problems. Men, they suppress feelings when it comes to processing information. They tend to lead more to analytical thinking. Fancy way of saying that they go the quickest answer as fast as they can. Women are more experiential when it comes to processing because they use those feelings, right? Feelings matter. They do. It's a big part of the experience. Think about it like this. A good way to understand why feelings are important is, have you been hungry? Were any of you hungry today? Yeah. And then you went and got a sandwich, right? Okay, you wouldn't have gotten the sandwich if you weren't hungry. Your feelings are how we interact with the world. So feelings are really important. What our logical brain does, what our analytical side of our brain does, is it helps us to solve the problems. We either have a feeling we like and want to keep, or a feeling we don't like and we want to change. And when you determine what that is, then our analytical part of our brain goes, hey, I'm hungry. I don't like this feeling. We have food in the refrigerator. I will go make myself a plate of that. And then they go and do the behavior of making the food. But it all starts with our feelings. Remember when I was talking about the two decision-making models? How naturalistic draws on our intuition and our past and our biases. And system one is all about our feelings on things. Our feelings matter. That's why 80% of our decisions are made through that lens. Now, how we go about making those decisions sometimes means that we have to slow down and think things through to get more of what we want. Magic numbers in a relationship. So here's some just interesting stats that the researchers have found are really important for good communication with couples. 5-to-1. There's a minimum number of positive interactions to negative interactions that a couple must maintain in order to have a good relationship, and that number is 5-to-1. There's also a maximum of good interactions to bad interactions. Now, there's different studies or research on this. There's the Gottman Institute. The Kahneman people did some stuff on it too, but the maximum number is 14. That's the highest I've seen. What they're saying here is if you have too many good interactions and not enough bad interactions, one of two things or both is happening. You're not fighting enough, or you're getting bored in the relationship. I like that part better. We want someone to challenge us, to help us grow, to keep us in check. And if we're not doing that with our partner, they lose interest, and so do we. So there's a maximum number of good interactions to bad interactions. And like I said, you could be both. You are 5 times more negatively biased towards your partner than positively biased. You will find something about your partner if you don't even have to try. You can get annoyed with your partner just by waking up he's snoring, he left toothpaste in the sink again, he left his dirty clothes. Like, it's very easy to do that. Keep going, keep going. Yeah, there's a list. Fun fact, I will go to iron a shirt, and I have a steamer. Have it on the hook, put the hook on the hanger, or the hanger on the hook, steam my shirt, take the shirt off, and leave. The hanger stays up there. So for a while, my wife would get up, take a picture of the hanger, text me, hey, you left your hanger up again. Okay? So you know what I did, being a good husband? I started doing it on purpose. I started putting more than one hanger up, that kind of a thing. It became a way for us to tease each other. I got the message. I understood what she wanted, and she knew that I understood what she wanted. I'm sorry, I forgot, that kind of a thing, right? So teasing is a big part of that interaction that you can have. You can turn positive and negative interactions around pretty easily, but you have to be willing to accept your partner's criticism, not get defensive about it. And then this one, the 90-minute rule. So this is something that I'll break this down a little bit, but what the research says is that you need at least 90 minutes per week of focused, uninterrupted conversation with your partner to maintain a good relationship. That allows for good fluid conflicts, it allows for good positive interactions. You need a minimum of 90 minutes. Like if you're at your busiest and everything's going to hell in a handbasket, carve out 90 minutes a week. It's 15 minutes a day about, okay? And you will do a lot better. Now, what I tell couples that come into the practice is I tell them to schedule a business meeting and a date night. And I give specific parameters around that. I want the business meeting to be no more than 90 minutes. This is where you're going to have every conflict. Because one of the things that makes conflicts hard is interference. How if I'm trying to fight with my wife and it's 10 o'clock at night and she's tired and I'm tired, we're not going to have a good fight. If I do it on a Sunday after church and we've eaten and everyone's in a good mood, it's going to go a lot better. So plan for when those big fights are going to happen and do it at a time in which you can have those conversations and you guys won't misunderstand each other. But also have a date night every week and have it for at least 90 minutes. Because when I have couples coming in, more than likely, they're not having enough positive interactions in their life. Those ratios are off. And that makes it hard to communicate as well. The best piece of advice I've seen when it comes to conflict was approach your partner as if they have your best interest in mind. That can be tough because we don't always feel that way. So when we have date nights, when we have good intimacy, when we express love verbally, what it does is it reinforces the idea and reassures us that our partner has our best interest at mind. So that when we have conflicts and discussions, we know they're coming from a place of love and not a place of criticism. One of the things that I try to encourage couples to do as a way to handle conflicts well is conflicts never happen in a vacuum. You don't just come home and your husband or your wife is mad at you or your co-parent is mad at you for something. It doesn't happen in that. If you're divorced and you're trying to work with your ex about your kid and it's not going well, that's not happening in a vacuum. There's leftover resentment maybe from the marriage. Maybe they're having a bad day. So what do you do about it? Well, practice gratitude daily. Whatever kind of relationship you have with the other parent, if you're divorced and you're single or if you're together, it's being intentional about being appreciative of the other person sets the stage for good conversation. It's, again, a reinforcer that says, at least on this issue, we're on the same team. Create a safe conflict opportunity. That's the business meetings. Make it known that it's okay for your partner, your co-parent, your husband, your wife, to come and talk to you. Earlier, I talked about validating the emotions of our children. It's also important to validate the emotions of our co-parent, our spouses. You don't always have to agree. You don't always have to feel the same feelings that they feel, but you do need to validate their feelings. If they have a feeling, they're right. That feeling is right. That allows for a safe space. Doing business meetings and scheduling that and having conversations at the right time is also a really good idea. There's a passage in the Bible that says, don't let the sun go down on your anger. Oftentimes get misinterpreted to mean have the fight before you go to bed. I would argue that's a horrible idea. Matter of fact, my wife and I years ago put a rule in, no serious conversations after 9 o'clock. And we've had that rule since before we were married. And it's really worked. We fight all the time. She's mad at me right now probably, I don't know. But we fight all the time. It's sort of how we do it. But the fights happen very quickly, they're resolved very easily, and we get over it. One of the funniest things, my aunt and uncle in Texas, I've been married a long time, and we were there for Thanksgiving. My uncle is in the kitchen. They have a big house. He's a dentist. He's done really well. They have a big house, and he was in the kitchen, like over where that pole is, and my wife and my aunt were talking kind of like on the other side over here, right? He wasn't paying attention to anything she was saying. He's got his hearing aids in. He can't hear. Out of nowhere, he overheard something. He goes, no, that's wrong. That isn't what happened. He starts yelling at her. She's like, no, you're wrong. You don't even know what we're talking about. And the conversation was over. I thought it was a great example of good conflict. Schedule connection time. This is date nights. When I say date night, I don't mean spend a lot of money going to a concert. Put the kids to bed, lock the door, turn on a show, and cuddle. Just be intentional about spending time together where you're not going to have a serious conversation and you're just going to be intimate in some way. There's 5 kinds of intimacy, and they actually are tied to developmental psychology. There's cognitive intimacy, physical intimacy, which sex is a part of that, but it's not sex necessarily, okay? Physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, moral or spiritual intimacy, and social intimacy. And you can kind of, if you think about it, you can kind of make sense of that. Cognitive intimacy would be like, can you have a vulnerable discussion with your partner about something like politics or something like that? That would be an example of cognitive intimacy. Emotional intimacy is sharing your feelings. Physical is touching and cuddling, right? The idea is give yourself time to make sure that those things are happening. And finally, assume positive intent. That's the idea of go into this with the idea that your partner has your best interest in mind. If you can do that, it's very difficult to hear what they're saying as criticism. My wife and I were having a conversation once, and she goes, I want to tell you something, but I'm afraid you're going to get defensive if I do. And I said, okay, well, look, I got to tell you, it's not the what you say that makes me defensive, it's the how you say it. Like if you say to me, hey, you're a bad dad and you don't spend enough time with the kids, I'm going to get kind of defensive about that. You're criticizing me as a father. That's an insecurity of mine. I want to be a good father. So if you say it like that, I'm going to get kind of defensive. But if you said, hey, babe, you know, if the kids really miss you, you think you can take time off to spend some more time with them? I'm going to say, yeah. I'm not going to get defensive with that. And she goes, well, I don't know how to say it your way, so I'm just going to say it my way. And then she said something like, you're a bad dad who doesn't spend enough time with his kids. But I understood her intent, so I just laughed and I didn't get mad about it. And we had a discussion about it, and I took like some time off and hung out with the kids. The intent matters, and understanding your partner's intent matters. It's very difficult to say things perfectly. You guys have probably heard of I feel statements. It's a common thing in family psychology. You use an I feel statement to express yourself. The intention is that you're taking responsibility for something that's going on instead of criticizing your partner. However, what tends to happen is somebody will say something like, I feel like you're a jerk. That never goes well. That's still a criticism. The trick is to not necessarily be perfect, but to be forgiving and gracious to your partner. And when they say something that hurts you, you can interpret it through a way that doesn't. You can change the way you hear the message. Now, making the right decision, this is where it gets tricky. Okay, let's assume, I'm going to put this all together real quick. Let's assume your wife or the mother of your child comes to you and says, I am concerned about Johnny, all right? I've observed these things. I did everything Nick said. I tracked it all down. I wrote it all down. He's been showing bad grades. I found a vape in his car. I think we need to address it. What do you do as a partner? Well, guys will typically be behind women on that. Women will find that stuff normally first. Not always, but normally. And if that happens, what you want to say is, okay, tell me more. What happens is because women have that great intuition and they're terrific with experiential thinking, they're going to pick up on a problem with their kid way ahead of a guy. And the worst mistake a guy can make is to shut that down. If your co-parent, the mother of your child, your wife, comes to you and says, I have this concern, your response should always be, tell me more. Now, for the women out there, that doesn't mean you're right. Doesn't mean you're always right. Your gut is telling you something. That's important. But the role of a guy in this conversation is to slow everything down, to be analytical, to plan this out. So you'd sit, you'd have a discussion. What are the problems? How do we want to address this? And then you would make a plan. Maybe the plan is, let's go to Johnny and ask him about it first. Let's see what he says. Maybe the plan is, okay, we already know that that's not going to work, so let's find a good therapist. If you run into that point where you want to find that good therapist, if you've had that discussion and you're really ready to make the move, if you've determined that this is needed, there's a few things you want to understand. The first one is that how confidentiality works. If the kid is over the age of 12, they have the same rights of confidentiality as an 18-year-old. They're adults, according to the medical system. They have HIPAA, they're protected. I, as a therapist, can't tell you what your kid is telling me in session unless I think it's life-threatening and immediately life-threatening. If he's telling me he's using a drug of some kind that might be dangerous if he overdoes it, I technically can't tell you about that. Now, I have done that with parents because the fentanyl stuff, to me, I've just seen it too much. So if a kid comes to me and says that he's using drugs that could have fentanyl in it, I will break confidentiality on that because to me, that's too risky. But that's kind of a gray area, to be honest. But they have to keep things confidential. They have to. That's by design, that's important. And it's a good thing. You want that. Because why would he go to the therapist to tell him things when you're just going to turn around and tell that stuff right to you guys again? You want to trust your therapist, but understand that they have to have things confidential. It's required. The next thing that you want to understand is the importance of the connection. The two biggest things that go into a successful therapy process is the desire to change on the part of the kid or the patient or the client, and the connection with the therapist, or what we call a therapeutic alliance. One of the biggest compliments I can get is when a mom tells me, my kid came home and said that you said XYZ was okay. When the kid views me as such an ally in whatever is going on, that he's going to use me as an ally against his parents, that tells me I'm doing something right. We have a good connection. He trusts me. He trusts me to help him. Now, I usually warn parents that that's going to happen. I'll tell them, look, this is what we're going to expect. After about 4 to 6 weeks, if he's doing that, that's a good sign. Understand that I am on your side. But he's viewing me as an ally. That's what that is. So good connection is a huge thing. Therapeutic alliance is hugely necessary. A collaborative approach. Again, they can't tell you what's being said in session, but they can ask you, hey, what's going on at home? What am I not seeing? What are you concerned about? And they should do that. What I typically do when I work with an adolescent is I'll sit with the parents and the kid and I'll say something like, why does your mom think you need counseling? Because the kid doesn't think he needs it. And then the kid will look at the mom like, I don't know. And then the mom will tell me why the kid needs counseling. And then I get all the family history and everything because you got to get this background stuff in the initial session. You got to get the family history. You got to learn about drug use, that kind of a thing. Then I ask the parents to leave, and I talk with the kid a little bit to figure out what's going on with them. And I try to make it known to them that they have that same confidentiality and that we're working together. But I also tell the parents and the kid, we want to do a family session about once every 4 to 6 weeks. But it's up to him. It's up to the client. I can't make you guys do the family session if he's not ready. A lot of times kids won't do it. A lot of times they're getting a lot out of just the individual approach and they don't want to meet with their parents. And if they do, that's fine. But I want the parents to know that I'm collaborative with them. And we train our therapists to be that way too. It's a big thing. Because here's the thing. I might see your son for an hour or two a week, and you see them the rest of the time. The school sees them the rest of the time. Their coaches see them a lot more than we do. That 1 to 2 hours of intensive therapy stuff is good, but it's not enough to really activate a lot of change. The changes have to happen outside of the therapy office. The biggest determining factor in that is, do they want to? Do they want to change? And next is the home focus. Again, understanding that a lot more happens at home. So depending on what the situation is, we might do some family therapy without the kid there, just to try to get some background and implement some behavioral changes. You've heard of token economies, things like sticker charts and stuff like that. That usually works with younger kids. Don't be afraid to pay your kids for good grades, by the way. If you think about it, you wouldn't go to a class for 8 hours a day that you don't really want to go to if someone wasn't paying you, but we expect our kids to do it. They actually did this in Washington, D.C. They started paying kids for attendance and good grades, and a school that had a 60% dropout rate went to an 80% graduation rate, and the grade point average went up by a whole point when they started paying the kids for attendance and for accomplishments on their grades. Sometimes there's got to be a larger incentive involved for education. Sometimes there's not. It depends on the kid, and that's fine. So thinking about things like that and having those discussions and being open-minded and implementing those things at home can do a lot in helping a good thing happen. Now, I said at the beginning about naturalistic decision-making because I want to talk about clinical expertise a bit. Clinical expertise is the third thing in that list of 3 that matters. So the desire to change, hugely important. The relationship with the therapist, very important. Clinical expertise, not as important. Here's why. Almost every therapist is supervised. I'm supervised. I go to other people all the time in my practice and ask them, how do I handle this? Have you seen this before? And I'm one of the most experienced therapists in our practice. We have one lady who's got 1 extra year over me. Clinical expertise is important because they can take everything that they've learned and implement it. I've seen a lot of this before, as in the naturalistic decision-making thing. I can see a kid and within 15 minutes know whether or not they have ADHD. I used to think my diagnosis skills were kind of shady until I realized they weren't. Every single diagnosis that I had given, I don't think I've ever really gotten one wrong, to be honest. When I pass it over to a psychiatrist or if they get a neuropsych assessment, it comes back confirming what we already knew. It's really easy to pick it up when you're trained. And that's the role of a therapist. You might be seeing the problem, and you're right, but you involve someone who's an expert, who has that naturalistic decision making. They'll know what the problem is, they'll confirm it for you, and they'll have a plan to help you change it. Clinical expertise is important because it helps you be able to get to the end and help the problem get figured out a lot faster than you think. And there's a lot of evidence-based approaches. Psychology is a relatively new field when it comes to like medical stuff, but it's like about 150 years old, right? And there's still a lot we're learning. We don't know everything about how the brain works, but the stuff we do have is pretty rigorous as far as the evidence is concerned. Personally, the approach that I use is a guy named Carl Rogers. Carl Rogers was a minister who became a psychologist and then realized that a non-directive, empathic approach in dealing with his clients helped. In other words, he would literally just echo back their feelings and not give any advice ever. That's hard to do in today's society because things are a little more fluid. But he had case after case after case over the course of like 60 years that showed that his methodology worked. And he had various institutes and trainings and everything like that. He ended up winning the Nobel Prize under the Carter administration back in like the 70s. He won the Nobel Prize in psychology or whatever for his approach. So this stuff is really, it's real. It's not fake. Biggest thing is to start with self-awareness. If you're seeing something, chart it, but also understand that it could just be you. Don't just jump at the first sign of trouble. Start with some good self-awareness. Where are you coming from and what are your biases? Were you raised? Anybody know the song Say It Ain't So by Weezer? Yeah, I would hope so. It's a good song. We were just listening to it on the way over here. That song is incredibly deep. You guys know what it's about? It's about his stepfather, the entire song. His father was an alcoholic and left the family. Later turned his life around. But during the time of this song when it was written, there's a line, this bottle of Stevens. I Googled it once because like, that sounds like a cool alcohol. I wonder what that is. It's Stephen is his stepfather. He opens the refrigerator, there's a bottle of beer, and he freaks out. Why does he freak out? Well, my father abandoned the family because of his alcohol dependency. My stepfather, who I love and I'm very close with, has alcohol in the refrigerator. Oh my gosh, this is going to happen again. His past biases informed his current position and freaked him out. Your past biases, how you were raised, what you experienced with your brother, your sister, or your mom, is going to inform your current experiences when it comes to your own kids. So have a good amount of self-awareness so you're not finding problems that aren't there. You're not seeing ghosts. Secondly, apply some ratios. Again, begin tracking how these things go, how your interactions with your partner go, how your interactions with your kids go. Look for those good ratios, those 5-to-1 interactions. You want to have intentionality in your communication with your spouse because it'll help with the future conflict when you have to bring something up when there's something wrong with your child. Practice the 4 pillars. Be annoying. Be annoying in a loving way. Validate their emotions. Pay attention to your kids and see where they're at. Check in on them and know their friends. Practice those 4 pillars. And finally, seek support when needed. The 2 ways that you're going to find that your kid needs help is going to be you paying attention to what's going on or an emergency, right? The emergencies are the really scary ones, but you take every threat real. You don't pretend like it's just a cry for help. You treat that like it's gospel truth. And then you measure the patterns of behavior and act on it. Last piece of advice I'd like to give on this. Our practice, we have 30 clinicians, and we're really diverse. There's people who vote differently. There's people who believe differently. And that's by design. I personally am a Christian guy. I was a youth minister for a long time. And I use biblical truth in a lot of my sessions. I don't necessarily overtly say that, but I do think that there's stuff that goes into mental health. This isn't new. People have struggled with mental health for all of eternity. And people wrote down their experiences with God and how that made them right. And using that evidence and using that stuff in real life is important. But it's not the only answer. And not everybody believes that. And they won't accept it always. So having a diverse staff is important to us. And part of the reason for that is because everybody is so unique. I said earlier that therapists are experts. That's true. They are. They're experts in the field of mental health. They're not experts in the field of your specific child. As a matter of fact, your child isn't even an expert on himself. You know who is? You guys, the parents. So when you're finding a good therapist, understand that you are the expert. The therapist is the expert on how to fix the specific problem of the mental health, but they're not the expert on your kid. A good therapist will collaborate and hear your advice. They'll come from a similar walk of life to what you think your kid needs, and they'll connect. We try, for instance, it's not gospel truth, but we try to pair men with men and women with women and that kind of a thing, but it doesn't always have to happen that way. A good therapist understands your kid and understands your values and will work with you to help you and your child overcome their problems. So if you do find that you're running into a problem with your son or your daughter and you want to seek extra help, you can always contact us. Our website is unbrokenfamilycounseling.com. When we have the video, we'll release all the information on that as well. We have a list of 30 different therapists on there. There's good resources on Psychology Today as well. If you go to their website, you can filter it out to look for specific types of demographics for kids or for therapists to really find the right person. And shop around. You go to one guy or girl and you think they're good, great. Try a few and see what works. Most of this stuff is covered by insurance. Back in 2008, they made a parity law that made mental health on par with, or parity of, medical. So your medical health insurance will cover mental health. I've never seen it not covered. We take everything, for instance, at our practice, Medicaid and Medicare and all of it. A lot of practices do. Get the help when you need it. Don't let cost be a problem, because if you start to be concerned about that, it's going to just get a lot more expensive. Rehab is a lot more expensive than nipping a drug addiction before it becomes and requires rehab. It's $15,000 to go to a residential facility. It's $100 a week to go see us. If you see a problem, say something, find the right person, ask a lot of questions, get someone that's on the same page, and get someone to collaborate with you, because you're the expert. Thank you guys for coming today.